The University of Johannesburg is hosting a colloquium on the South African Development Community's 30-year milestone, its successes and failures at the Sandton Convention Center. Former Malawian President Joyce Banda is one of the keynote speakers, and she's on the podium right now. Let's take you there live.
Careful. Not on, but it's on. My dear sister here, and thank you for that introduction, but it was too long. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor for me to be here this morning. I was telling Dr. Zondi that I tried my level best to make my speech as brief as I could, as short as I could, but I failed. You will have to bear with me. This is a unique event, and I want to congratulate those that have organized this event, because this is a very important conversation, a conversation that is taking place in all corners of our region. But we needed a place like this where we can tease out and discuss in detail what is it that we want to see SADC become. And so I feel greatly honored to be accorded this opportunity to be one of the keynote speakers at this auspicious event as we, in this region of Africa, commemorate 30 years of existence of the Southern Africa Development Community, formerly SADC with double C, a sub-regional bloc established and founded 30 years ago to serve as a vehicle for our shared aspirations and goals. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I'm an African woman, and in our interaction yesterday, I was telling Dr. Zondi that being a typical African woman, I take seriously my role as a senior citizen, but I also am a feminist, but one that is an African feminist, and that's a discussion for another day. But one thing that becomes relevant to this event is that as an African woman of my age, we are storytellers. And in order for me to start this conversation, I have a story that I have to share. The story goes as follows. It is about 5 blind men, and I am sure that most of you have already heard this story. For me, it was my grandmother who told me, but it will be very relevant to this event. It is about 5 blind men and an elephant. The 5 blind men lived in a certain village, and like everybody else in that village, they heard about an elephant that had strayed into their village. They had never seen an elephant before, after all they couldn't see, and were eager to find out about elephants. Then someone suggested that they could go and feel the elephant with their hands. They could then get an idea of what an elephant looks like. The 5 blind men went to the center of the village, where all people made room for them to step forward and touch the elephant. Later on, they sat down and began to discuss their experiences. One of the 5 blind men who had touched the trunk of the elephant said that the elephant must be like a fig tree branch. Another one who touched the tail said the elephant probably looked like a snake or a rope. The 3rd blind man who touched the leg said the shape of the elephant must be like a pillar. A 4th man who touched the ear said that the elephant must be like a huge fan, while the 5th who touched the side said it must be like a wall. They sat for hours and argued. Each one was sure that his view was the correct one. Obviously, they were all correct from their own point of view, but no one was quite willing to to listen to the other. Finally, they decided to go to the wise man in the village and ask him who was correct. The wise man said, each one of you is correct, but each one of you is also wrong. Because each one of you only touched a part of the elephant's body. Thus, you only have a partial view of the animal. If you put your partial views together, you will get an idea of what an elephant looks like. The story tells us that when the blind man who touched the trunk of the elephant was asked to describe the elephant, he described it as a fig tree branch. Well, indeed, the trunk would be useful in describing an elephant. However, one thing for sure, an elephant is much more than just a trunk. The blind man who touched the leg said the shape of the elephant must be that of a pillar. Yes, like the other men, this blind man was right from his view, but one thing for sure, an elephant is more than just one leg. Industrial development and marketing integration is one critical agenda of pillar of the SADC. We can assess SADC's performance on this pillar alone as we look back and appreciate how the body has fared over the years. However, this pillar or agenda alone cannot define SADC. Therefore, cannot be used as enough ground or basis upon which a final judgment could be passed on SADC, as SADC is much more than just one pillar. Similarly, infrastructure development in support of regional integration is another key pillar of SADC. Indeed, we can dialogue how SADC has fared on this front. However, SADC's performance on this pillar alone cannot be used as enough ground or basis upon which a final verdict would be passed on SADC, as SADC is much more than this one pillar. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, deepening of economic integration characterized by customs union with a single external tariff by 2010, common market by 2015, monetary union by 2016, and finally, the formation of a single currency and an economic union by 2018 constituted an ambitious trajectory and vision, and SADC set forth for itself. These inspirations remain paramount to the objectives of SADC, and as they did and still provide one important area for assessing the performance of SADC 30 years after its inception. However, these alone cannot be used as enough ground or basis upon which a final verdict could be passed on SADC, as SADC is much more than these aspirations. In any case, some of us who were there when we do this last pillar, we are so excited that by 2018, SADC would be a different place. But here we are, it is still a pipe dream. It hasn't happened yet. And the question is why? Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, established to lead the region in attainment of economic growth through regional cooperation and integration, spurring regional development, as well as promoting political and security cooperation in the region. SADC, as an embodiment of our shared aspirations and destiny, has been and will continue to be a subject of intense and rigorous scrutiny. The scrutiny essentially has been from two perspectives. Firstly, how well is SADC suited for the role it was created, given its modus operandi? Mandate structures on one hand, and its authority and power in enforcement of its decisions among member states on the other. Secondly, how has SADC performed on the goals and objectives for which it was created? Delving into literature on SADC, I've come to realize that SADC is both a beneficiary and a victim of what I would term compartmentalized approach to scrutiny or review, as it were. It is not uncommon for scholars, researchers, like those in this room, and even analysts, to pick a single area or aspect of SADC and be it a pillar, protocol, treaty, and pass a final verdict upon SADC, positive or negative. For example, SADC's failure to enforce some of its protocols among member states has earned it a negative name from some quarters. It's called a toothless bulldog. Based on this apparent failure by SADC, some quarters have passed their final verdict that SADC is a total failure. Furthermore, SADC's failure to reign over military conflicts in some parts of the region is another area that has earned it a bad name. Based on this, some quarters have passed their final verdict on SADC that it is an inept body. I can go on and on with such damning verdicts on SADC. Similarly, there's a lot of literature on SADC's achievements and successes. A publication by SADC on its 25th anniversary commemoration
Former Malawian President Joyce Banda speaking at a University of Johannesburg colloquium.